YouTube, how's it going? It's J&A Exotics and welcome back. So in today's video, we're going to be comparing leopard geckos and crested geckos. Which of these two are the best choice for a pet if you can only pick one? Let's jump into it. Crested geckos and leopard geckos are some of the best pet reptiles for any level of hobbyist. Both are hardy pets, have care needs on the simpler side, and usually have great personalities. But which one of these are actually the better choice? We're going to break this down into 4 categories and we're going to see which gecko reigns superior. So obviously, before we get into this, each gecko is going to have different care needs. Each gecko has their pros and each gecko has their cons. To start with, round number 1, we're going to be talking about enclosure sizes. Leopard geckos are an adventurous, terrestrial, nocturnal gecko. They love to climb on lower rock formations, sticks, and branches while they look for prey. They average roughly around 8 to 11 inches long. Leopard geckos are going to need an enclosure big enough to accommodate their size, their activity at night, and to provide a proper heat gradient for them. Leopard geckos should be housed in a relatively large enclosure, at least a 40-gallon breeder. This is going to be 30 inches long, 18 inches deep, and 16 inches tall. With this enclosure being on the bigger side, it's going to be slightly harder to achieve the perfect temperatures for this species. Now, crested geckos are also an extremely active crepuscular arboreal species. They love to climb on any surface, and they love jumping. Crested geckos stay slightly smaller than leopard geckos. They average around roughly 8 to 10 inches depending on the individual. Now, since they are arboreal, they're going to need a taller enclosure rather a longer enclosure. A 24-inch tall, 18-inch wide, and an 18-inch deep enclosure is adequate for an adult crested gecko. One of these enclosures is substantially smaller than a 40-gallon breeder. Since crested geckos need temperatures below 80 degrees Fahrenheit, this enclosure can easily be heated with a lower wattage bowl. Now, with all this said and done, I'm giving the first round to the crested gecko. Their enclosures are far smaller than a 40-gallon breeder, they're easier to heat, and they'll fit inside of your home easier. Now, leopard geckos have a great appetite. Once they see bugs in front of them, they'll wiggle their tails and they'll launch themselves directly at their prey. These guys are so much fun to watch eat. Leopard geckos are insectivores. They feed on a variety of feeder insects such as crickets, dubia roaches, mealworms, calcium worms, etc. The only bummer is that you have to keep live insects inside of your house. It's not practical to go run to a pet store every single time you feed your gecko. Now, crested geckos are far different when it comes to eating. They mainly eat powdered crested gecko diets, and it doesn't really matter the brand, that's completely up to your discretion. This requires you to manually prepare their food several times a week. This is where things can be a little bit tricky though. While crested geckos can have a great appetite and eat whatever's in front of them, some of them are very picky eaters. I personally have 2 crested geckos that are picky eaters, and they'll actually refuse some of the Pangea flavors that I offer to them. Crested geckos should also be offered insects at least once a week. There's no escaping the insects, but you just don't have to keep as many on hand. This round's going to be going to the leopard gecko. Also, if your crested gecko does happen to be a picky eater, you're going to have to buy several flavors of crested gecko diet just for them to be able to eat. Now, when you own a reptile, one of the main things everybody wants to do is handle it. This allows you to form a close bond between you and the animal. Also, let's face it, when you have company, it's awesome to be able to pull your reptiles out and show them off to all your friends. Now, leopard geckos, they're fairly quick and jumpy as juveniles. Now, with frequent handling as they grow older and mature, they'll become more accustomed to you handling them. And as long as you're gentle and you don't make any wrong moves like grabbing or squeezing the gecko really tight, your leopard gecko is not going to drop its tail when you're holding it. A tail drop's really only going to occur when the gecko feels threatened. Due to their small size, I really wouldn't let toddlers handle them, at least not without supervision, but other than that, you should be fine. While it all depends on the individual leopard gecko, they have great temperaments. With that being said, you really don't have to worry about getting bit. Crested geckos can also be tamed down to an extent. As juveniles, these guys are daredevils. They're fast, they're quick, and they'll jump to whatever they can. Their bodies have literally adapted over the years for them to jump and glide through the air at short distances. While some individuals may never grow out of jumping off your hand whenever they get a chance to, they do tame down to a manageable level with frequent handling. Crested geckos also seem to be a bit more delicate than leopard geckos. While it is still safe to handle them, I feel like crested geckos will drop their tail a lot easier than leopard geckos. These guys are literally nature's scaredy cats. Sometimes just the vibrations from thunder can cause them to drop their tail. I'm not sure if this is just me or if it's everybody else too, but every time I feel like I'm handling my crested gecko, they poop on me. I've never been pooped on more than any other species than a crested gecko. Just like leopard geckos, it's highly unlikely that you'll be bitten by a crested gecko. Now, this round is going to be going to leopard geckos. Now, with this being said, both species have great temperaments and they're both fairly easy to handle. I took into account that as your leopard gecko gets older, it's far more easier to hold a leopard gecko. I also took the poop factor into account. Like I said, almost every single time I have my crested geckos out, they poop on me. Now, leopard geckos are readily available at almost every exotic pet shop and expo, but how much are they? With this being said, the prices of the gecko are really based off of what you want. You can buy a leopard gecko for $35 and you can spend all the way up to $1,000 depending on what you're looking for. The choice, it's really yours. Just like leopard geckos, crested geckos can be found at almost any exotic pet shop and reptile expo. I've seen more crested geckos than I did ball pythons at the last reptile expo I went to. So basically, if you want one, they're readily available. You can buy them for as much as $25 all the way up to spending thousands, again, depending on the morphs and characteristics that you're looking for. Now, the winner of this match, it's a draw. Both of these species, crested geckos and leopard geckos, are readily available, and it really depends on how much you want to spend on them. The choice is yours, it all falls back on you. The winner of this competition is the leopard gecko. Both species are honestly great to own, regardless of my opinions. I used fair judgment and I tried my hardest not to be biased, even though I wanted crested geckos to win. Why don't you guys tell me down in the comment section who you think should have won? Thank you guys so much for watching. The support has been astronomical lately. I honestly can't believe it. I greatly appreciate it. I don't think you guys understand. But if you guys like the video, smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, drop a comment if you like down in the comment section. And I'll see you in the next one.